Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's recording. I will discuss three topics, three phenomena that I figure I won't have time for in class later today. Instead, I will discuss them, introduce them to you here in this recording, and I will now share my screen with you. There we go. I will say a very few words about mysticism as a background to a couple of examples of monumental building in the Timurid Empire in the late 14th and early 15th century. And then I will take you to Spain and we'll have a look at the Samuel Halevi Synagogue in Toledo and finally the magnificent Alhambra. Now, I will finish class later today by showing you an image that relates to Byzantine, a specific religious movement in Byzantium that it was called hesychasm. And hesychasm was a mystic trend, you could say, where the followers believed that through prayer and contemplation, the individual could transcend the physical limitations of being human and merge spiritually with the divine. And this kind of mystic conviction is not unique for Byzantine religious thought or for Christianity, because similar ideas about intense self-absorbing concentration and prayer as a way to attain spiritual unity with the divine. Similar ideas exist in all religions in all times. The focus in mysticism is not on outward rituals and intellectual arguments about divine things, but on the mystical experience of being one with God, an experience that cannot even be properly described in words. And there are mystics in Islam as well. The Sufis is a sect that still exists. Sufis practice meditation and prayer and ecstatic dancing as a means to attain union with God, with Allah. Prayer and meditation. And they likened this experience of being merged with God to when an insect was drawn into the flame of a burning light and was subsumed by the light. And this is the mausoleum, the grave building or monumental tomb building of a Sufi mystic and teacher, Ahmad Yasavi. And this mausoleum was built by the great Timur Lenk, the founder of the Timurid Empire in Central Asia, in Afghanistan and Iran in the 1370s. And this Ahmad Yasavi, the Sufi mystic and teacher, he was an important figure, particularly for Turkish Muslims, because it had been Ahmad Yasavi, who had converted the Turks to Islam. And when Turks went in pilgrimage to Mecca, a visit or a stop by his grave in Yasa was a first stop to make. And the Turkish people, they were key allies of Timur Lenk. So to promote the veneration of this Ahmad Yasavi, this Sufi teacher, that was a political strategic move by Timur Lenk towards his allies, the Turks. And he built big. The blue dome that crowns the mausoleum is the biggest, or was at the time, the largest in Central Asia. Beneath, inside, is an enormous bronze cauldron that Timur Lenk himself had given to the shrine. And then at a straight axis from the dome and the cauldron is the tomb of Ahmad Yasavi. That is B on the plan. The tomb is placed in a smaller domed chamber at the center of the Qibla wall. This is a very prominent position. It's in the place where the mihrab is normally situated in a mosque. So the mausoleum space is not as such a mosque. The mosque proper in the complex is the smaller space that is marked C on the plan. The capital of the Timurid Empire was Samarkand, and Timur-Lenk, the founder of the Timurid Empire, he was a major patron of architecture. And in Samarkand, he started to build a mosque, the Bibi Khanum Friday Mosque. It was named after his favorite concubine or favorite wife. It wasn't finished, it was left unfinished when he died. The parts that were built consists basically of 4 Ivans, those magnificent gates that are characteristic of Islamic architecture. There is the Qibla Ivan, A on the plan. There are 2 smaller, everything is relative, but 2 smaller side Ivans, and then there is the entrance. And behind the Qibla Ivan and the side Ivans are domed chambers, and this was a new feature at the time. So this was, when it was built, it was the world's largest mosque. And the photo shows the enormity of the entrance Ivan and also the Qibla Ivan. They literally dwarf everything around them. But what we see today is, in fact, largely a reconstruction that was made during the Soviet era in the 20th century. Much of the mosque had collapsed in an earthquake in 1897. This is a photo from the early 20th century that shows what it looked like after that. And there is a feature that is, we saw also on the Ahmad Yasavi shrine, the ribbed blue dome or cupola. It appears also here on the Bibi Khanum Friday Mosque, and it reappears on the mausoleum of Timur himself, or of his dynasty, the Gur Emir, that in Samarkand also, that Timur built for himself and his successors. The mausoleum, I have indicated it with a circle on the plan. The mausoleum has the by now familiar octagonal plan. It doesn't really show on the photo because there is this projecting portal or Ivan in front of it. And the ribbed blue dome that crowns the mausoleum space. And inside we see rectangular blocks that aren't really the tombs. They are called kenotaph. A kenotaph means that it's an empty representation of a tomb. So the actual tombs are in the ground beneath. They are made from marble, and Timur Lenk's own kenotaph is made from a monolithic block of jade. This is a very attractive interior. It has a rich ornamentation, exuberant ornamentation that spreads out over the walls and the vaults like oriental carpets. And this delight in coating all surfaces of an interior is a characteristic of Islamic architecture that differentiates it from most European architecture. If you compare here with a Gothic cathedral, the St. Vitus Cathedral in Prague, in Bohemia. I will talk more about that in class later today. In European Gothic late medieval architecture, the wall surfaces are often left bare. The main feature in a Gothic interior are the architectonic elements that are emphasized in an articulation of the constructional principles of the buildings. There may be painted images on the walls, but there is not an overall patterning of the entire wall surface like we see in Islamic architecture. The walls of the Gur Emir interior, they are treated like canvases to paint on. And the artists in this case have also used a whole range of techniques to achieve this. The dado, which is the lower part of the wall, dado, is set with onyx, a semi-precious stone. The walls are painted and they are molded in plaster, and there are inscriptions written in gold on jasper, which is yet a semi-precious stone. And the vaults, the muqarnas in the vaults, are clad with painted molded paper. It's called papier-mâché in French, which means chewed paper. And this was a technique imported from China that was taken in use here in the Gurimir mausoleum to great effect, I would say. A major reason for this high level of sophistication and complexity in Islamic decorative ornamentation is, of course, the general prohibition against figurative imagery in a religious context in Islam. This applies to Judaism as well. What you see on the large photo here is the interior of a Spanish synagogue, the Samuel Halevi Synagogue in Toledo in central Spain. And here is the same kind of aesthetic in the decoration, particularly of the eastern wall, with the niches for the Torah scrolls facing Jerusalem, the direction of prayer for the Jews. Again, the wall is covered by a carved and painted stucco ornamentation that is molded into vegetal and interlaced pattern. It looks really like if oriental carpets have been hung on the wall. There is a fantastic wooden ceiling. Above and below the windows, the upper windows, are bands that are inscribed with blessings in Arabic, not in Hebrew, but in Arabic. And there are also several coats of arms of the Castilian Christian kingdom. Samuel Halevi, the Jewish Samuel Halevi, he was employed at the royal court as a treasurer and as a judge. And these coats of arms, the royal coats of arms, they are symbols of his loyalty towards the Castilian Christian king, King Pedro. I have talked earlier in the course about the multi-ethnic, multi-religious culture of Islamic Spain. Toledo was not Islamic at this time. It had been part of the Christian kingdom of Castile since the late 11th century. But the demographic and the cultural heterogeneity, complexity, continued to be a feature of Toledo, as in many other parts of Spain as well during the Middle Ages. There was a mix of Muslims and Jews and Christian inhabitants. It wasn't always that peaceful, though, and particularly the Jews. They were increasingly persecuted, they were forced to convert, and eventually they began to be killed on a large scale. And this happened to Samuel Halevi also. The Castilian Christian king, Pedro, he was criticized by his enemies for being too permissive, too lenient towards the Jews. And in the end, he turned against Halevi and charged him on corruption and had him executed. In 1360, that happened. Which means that the date that I give here of the Samuel Halevi Synagogue is entirely wrong. It should be probably 1357, not 1537. I sincerely apologize. Now, this is the crown jewel of Islamic Spanish architecture. It's the Palace Alhambra outside the city Granada in South Spain. And Alhambra is a transcription of the Arabic word or the Arabic name of this palace. It was called Alhambra, which means the Red Palace because of the red stone that it is constructed from. Alhambra is one of the largest and best preserved palaces in the Islamic world all over, and it's a major monument of Islamic architecture. It was begun in 1238 by the Emir Muhammad I Ibn al-Ahmar. He was the founder of the Emirate of Granada. That was the last Muslim state in Spain, and it lasted until 1492. Then, in 1492, the last Emir, who was Muhammad XII, he had to finally surrender to the then Catholic King of Spain, Ferdinand II of Aragon, and then all of the Iberian Peninsula was finally Christianized. But the Emirate of Granada was the Islamic rule that lasted the longest until 1492. So And this Muhammad I Ibn al-Ahmar, the founder of the Emirate of Granada, he was the also the building patron that began the Alhambra Palace. And it was continually rebuilt and modified by his successors. So this is the plan of what it looks like today. It's a huge complex that takes the better part of a day to explore. It consists in essence of two palaces, the Comares Palace and the Palace of the Lions. And the Comares Palace is the more official part, whereas only special guests, VIPs, select guests, were allowed into the Palace of the Lions. And there are halls of varying sizes for more official gatherings. There are open courtyards with pools. There are royal chambers, so the living quarters of the emirs and the family and the court. And there are palace baths. And there is ornamentation everywhere on the highest possible quality in stone and in stucco and in wood. These are just a few photos that give you a glimpse of the magnificence and the splendor of Alhambra. It's really difficult to describe other than with photos. Words just aren't enough. You have a fairly detailed survey of the various Alhambra spaces in the textbook. I'll just show you a few examples. This is the so-called Hall of the Ambassadors in the Comares Palace, so the more official part of the Alhambra complex. And there is a gradation of materials and decoration on the interior walls here. From the ground up, the walls are clad with tiles in blue and white, ceramic tiles. Above that, stucco, molded stucco that was originally also painted with inscriptions that praise the ruler. So again, we see this kind of ornamental overall surface patterning, as if the whole space, the whole room is swathed in textiles or oriental carpets. I've already tried to describe that as a characteristic of Islamic interior design. And then the vault, the ceiling, it's a pyramidal vault made from wooden pieces that are arranged so that they give the impression of a starry sky, a night sky with stars. And this Hall of the Ambassadors is more or less contemporary with the Samuel Halevi Synagogue in Toledo that I just show you. That still is from 1357, not 1537. And Samuel Halevi's employer, patron, King Pedro, he had in fact close connections to the emir in Alhambra, to Muhammad, or in Granada, Muhammad V, who was the chief patron at this time of the Alhambra. So it's no perhaps coincidence that these two spaces look quite similar. This is the Hall of the Two Sisters, another of the magnificent splendors or miracles of Alhambra. It's crowned by a vault or a dome, a muqarnas dome that looks like it's made from crystals or stalactites or maybe folded paper like origami. It's quite unreal. And the photo you see here is taken on a sunny day. It's lit only by natural light. And there is an inscription on the dado, the lower part of the wall, that explains that the vault or the dome represents the rotation of the heavenly spheres. And this is the Lion Court in the Lion Palace of the Lions. In the center of the court is a fountain, marble fountain that is supported by 12 lions, and then 4 water channels emerge from this central fountain and create a 4-part garden that represents paradise. This is from the arcade that surrounds the central courtyard on the Lion Court. Now, I must say that the main architectural feature of the court and of Alhambra in general, main architectural features are not the galleries or the columns, it's light. It's the court and many other of the halls and courtyards and galleries in Alhambra are spaces made for the play of light, the reflection of sunlight that is cast back and forth by these yellow stone surfaces. And just to show you what I mean. This is just a little film from another part of the Alhambra complex, the Partel Palace, that is actually outside the ground plan. The porch of the Partel Palace, and there is a pool outside, and this film show you how the light reflected from the rippling water surface is thrown on this magnificent wooden ceiling in the porch, and how this creates a play of movement and light, and also the sound of the water. It's really difficult to catch in words. So that connects to the mystic experience that I described in the beginning of this lecture. The magic of Alhambra is for a large degree made from light and light reflected by water. So, and that has led me to think that architecture is for a large part about light. It's not necessarily primarily about ground plans and stone surfaces and architectural elements. Light is a very essential feature of what architecture is. That's it for now. See you later today in class. Thank you for listening.